Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here. Welcome to the 53rd episode of Dirty Chess Tricks. In this episode, I am going to show you one of the amazing counter trick in the Scotch game from the black perspective. The opening arises after the following order: e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, d4, e captures d4 and knight captures d4. If you recall, in my past, I have covered a full-time Rapruta starting with knight to f6. So if you haven't checked it out, I strongly insist you to watch those two videos which gives you a detailed Rapruta coverage from the black perspective. However, in this video, we are going to look other popular choice, namely bishop to c5. So black is attacking that knight and white has few choices. Well, amongst them, bishop to e3 is a main line, but the good point is, no matter however white responds, black response is very much universal. So for example, after the move bishop to e3, we are going to pressurize this knight one more time with queen to f6, and we reach to one of the most important junction in this line. Here white has two choices. One is c3 and the second is knight to b5. In this video, we are going to look knight to b5, which is a very trappy line by white. However, if your opponent continue with c3, then as I have highlighted over here, black has a very simple plan to execute, namely knight to e7, castle and d6. And this is pretty much you can play against any move order by white and get a very active game. I have attached a model game in the PGN which will give you a very good direction how to play such a position. Okay, let's check out what is happening after this tricky move knight to b5. So white is immediately eyeing at juicy c7 square and black has to respond very accurately. Here my recommendation is you should start with bishop captures e3. So threat is very obvious. We want to checkmate the king on f2 and white cannot touch on c7 due to the king to d8 and white will lose a piece. So f captures e3 is forced. Well, already black has given white some shattered pawn, and on top of everything, black has this lethal check, queen to h4. If king moves, then queen comes back to d8 and black has a dream position. So obviously, white has to continue with g3 in order to keep the tactical battle going on. Now, as per the database, the old move in this position is queen back to d8, which defends the c7 pawn. However, that is not the case here because we are going to continue with this aggressive approach, namely queen captures e4. So black is attacking the rook in the corner, so white response is force. White has to capture on c7, and after king to d8 and knight captures a8, well, it's the case where both the rooks are gone from the table and the material is equal. But see the difference now as white knight is trapped in the corner of the board. And this is the important feature of this line as we are going to trap down this knight and remain a healthy piece up. If you check this position in online database, you will find out that white has mainly tried 4 options, and let's see each by turn. The first option I want to consider is knight to c3. And one thing you have to remember is, in majority of the cases, we are going to continue with knight to f6, not knight g to e7. White's idea is he wants to play queen to d6. So now he can quickly castle on the queen side, and also there is some threat on c7, but not to worry, as black has this winning move in this position, namely queen to f3. So not only we are stopping white to castle on the queen side, but right now there is a threat of queen captures e3, something which white has to pay attention immediately. Well, the baseline goes as follows: queen to c7 check, king to e7, and now in order to protect the e3 pawn, white has to play queen to f4. One of the game in the database continue with king to d2, which turns out as a big time disaster, as after the simple continuation, knight to d5, attacking two spots, knight captures d5, queen captures d5, king to e1, and now very nice move, queen to c5, which once again renewed the threat. And not to mention that black has a simple plan to execute, namely rook to e8 and king to f8, and the net result is it is now only white who has to worry about his open king. So considering these factors, if you put this position in any professional engine, it will tell you that there is only one defensive resource here, namely queen to f4. After that, our task becomes more easy, as we are going to exchange this queen and then continue with this very important move, king to d8, stopping knight escape route. Well, now white is in a big trouble, as majority of the game continue from here onwards with castle on the queen side, and surprisingly enough, black has this winning resource, d5, which more or less decide the game on the spot. The point is, after the move knight captures d5, we have this intermezzo, bishop to g4, counter-attacking the rook, and after rook goes to anywhere, let's say rook to d2, the simple sequence goes as follows: knight captures d5, rook captures d5, king to c8, and you can see that king is approaching to the knight. And even though after rook to g5, bishop to e6 and rook captures g7, yes indeed, white has 2 pawns for a piece, but I don't think so it's enough. And with some accurate play, definitely black is getting his full point. Well, the second move I want to consider is queen to d6. And this is what exactly most of the white player is hoping for. As I mentioned earlier, if you continue with knight g to e7, then there is a nasty trap here, guys. And you should see this, as after knight to d2, white is quickly looking to castle on the queen side. And accordingly, many black players has churned out this move, queen to d5, thinking that okay, we can exchange the queen and then get the knight in the corner. Well, guess what? Here the trap springs into the picture, as after queen to c7 check, king to e8, and now this star move, queen captures c8, boom! White is completely winning. The point is, after knight captures c8 and the move knight to c7 check, white regained the queen with interest, as it come out with a healthy bishop advantage. So please remember this, do not play knight g to e7. Rather, as I mentioned earlier, always play the move knight to f6 and completely avoid this nasty trap. Here white has few options, but if we continue with knight to c3 or queen to c7, then it will transpose to the line which we already look at it. For example, after queen to c7 check, king to e7, and after knight to c3 and queen to f3, we completely transpose to the line which we have already gone through it. So apart from this, the only independent reply over here is knight to d2, which again goes for the same tactic, but this time around it doesn't work, as black has this very nice saving resource, namely knight to e8. Not only attacking the queen, but covering the important c7 square. And just to point out how good this position is for the black, I like to show you an email game between two strong players, where white continue with queen to f4, and black obviously grab the weak h2 pawn. Okay, white castle on the queen side, and rightly so, black opt for the queen trade with queen to h6. If queen I exchange, then knight in the corner is a goner. So in the game, white find nothing better than queen captures f7, but that allows this simple transaction, namely queen captures e3, king to b1, and now queen captures e3, and suddenly black emerged with 2-pawn advantage, and not to forget this loose knight sitting in the corner. Well, I just want to point out how easily black untangled his position. After knight to e4, black plays queen to g4, attacking two spots. And after the forced reply, knight to c3 and the move d6. Once the light square bishop becomes free, it is all doom and gloom for the white camp. You can check out rest of the game in the PGN, where black finish off the white in mere 29 moves. The third move I want to consider here is queen to g4. And I think this is the only exception where we are going to continue with knight g to e7. So idea is very simple. If white continue with knight to c3, then knight to e5 is a very strong reply. So accordingly, white has to capture on g7, and after that we are going to continue with rook to g8. If queen captures f7, then queen captures h2, and black initiative continues. So the only good reply here for the white is to capture on h7 and same time supporting the h2 pawn. Well, no matter, black has the equally good move in this position, namely queen to g1, attacking on e3. So white response is forced. White has to play queen to h6, defending the e3. But now you see the dark side of playing with only queen, as black initiative started with knight to f5, attacking two spots. After queen to f6, knight c to e7, the e3 pawn is lost. And as per the engine, the best white can do over here is to play the move e4. But even after this, it doesn't stop black to demolish white camp, as after the following sequence, queen check, bishop to e2, knight to d4, threatening a checkmate on e2. Doesn't matter however white defends, let's say knight to c3. On the very next move, we can munch the rook in the corner and easily win this game. Last but not least, what happens after the move queen to d2? You guessed it, right? Yup, our trademark move, knight to f6. And after knight to c3, which has a clear intention to castle on the queen side, we are going to continue with rook to e8. The point is, after castle on the queen side, we are targeting the loose e3 pawn with queen to f3. Here white has two choices. Amongst them, rook to e1 is a pretty bad one, as after the following sequence, knight to e4, attacking two spots, so white response is forced. White has to capture on e4. And after queen takes, bishop to g2 and the move queen to e5, you can see the easy route to the corner knight. And once white loses this piece, the game is almost gone. One of the very recent game from this position between two 2200 plus rated opponent continue with e4. So white obliged that he cannot protect on e3. So he chose the tactical path, but I'm afraid it doesn't turn out well, as after knight captures e4, knight captures e4, queen captures e4, white's idea was he wants to deliver this check and get his pawn back. But what he missed out is, after f6, queen captures g7 and the move queen to g6, by force white has to exchange the queen and later on indeed manage to lose the knight. Again, you can check the full game in the PGN where black demolished white very quickly. That's it guys. I hope with this mini video you are now confident enough to meet the move knight to b5 in the Scotch game. Remember, once you reach this position, play the move knight to f6, and no matter however white wriggles, he is going to lose knight in the corner, and with the careful play, you can easily convert it the full point. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I'll meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.